And welcome, everyone. I want to thank you very much for taking the time today to sit down throughout this presentation with Wayne. We're really, really excited to be able to speak about this company. Before I turn it over to Wayne, he goes through that detailed presentation of TraceSafe. I just want to go over a couple things very quickly. Throughout this presentation, it's be about 20, 25 minutes or so. On the right-hand side, though, you're going to see a chat function. There's a lot of individuals here today that have taken the time out of their day, whether it be work or personal. So there's a lot of like-minded individuals here. We'd love to hear from you. Why don't you go ahead and throw where you are, where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you. But beside the chat function, you'll see Q&A. That's where you can ask your questions. We're going to go through the presentation in full, and at the very end, my camera will come back on, and Wayne and I will go through those questions, and he'll go through as many as we can throughout our 1 hour time slot and go one by one answering all the questions that you have for him. So really, really excited about that. But Wayne, I'm going to turn it over to you, my good man. Whenever you're ready, you just call me back and we'll come over for that question and answer period as well.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it. Okay. So I'm going to be presenting TraceSafe and going through our growth, the origin story, the growth, and where we're going next with the company. So just a quick overview of our team. This is a very deep, both technical and sales orientated team. The company started early on in the med tech space with a infant tracking band that was used to monitor where infants were in a maternity ward setting. So this is something very important, obviously from a privacy perspective, from a health and safety perspective, to make sure that the wearable itself was not going to impact the infants at all. And also from a platform perspective, to have a mature platform that could integrate into all the hospital systems. So this is really the base layer of what we have is exactly that. A product that's thought through very carefully around privacy, security, and integrations, as well as the wearables themselves being very safe, very, very effective, and easy to use. So that origin story of coming from the maternity ward setting and a hospital and medical application is critical to understanding how TraceSafe is able to scale up more effectively than their peers, because they have such a solid foundation from the beginnings. Dennis Kwan is CEO of TraceSafe Technologies. So TraceSafe Inc. is the holding company, which I'm CEO of. TraceSafe leads our technical and product teams. He was a very early and very influential person in the wearable sector generally. They had the first voice-enabled wearable, and Dennis holds many patents, and very, very, very senior, experienced technologist. And on the technology side as well, Suresh Singhamsetti, came a lot of the parallel path with Dennis Kwan, coming through that wireless business. Key thing being the technical team has deep experience right to the silicon level. So meaning the wearables that they design and work with, embedded systems, silicon, everything, it's all deeply integrated. These are not parts that we are piecing together. It's custom PCB, custom silicon, custom everything, which tends to give us better performance. And how that shows up in product is that, the products tend to be lighter. They have less of a heavy battery, but they have better battery performance in a lot of cases. And so, when you're making a choice between competitive products, the product with deeper technology integration tends to win, because it manifests itself in things like the physical world, like how heavy the product is, how nice it is to use, those sorts of things. So that's really important to our competitive landscape. And then you have Gord Zylstra, who's our Chief Revenue Officer. Gord came to us via SAP, He was originally with SuccessFactors. SuccessFactors was bought by SAP for around $2 billion. Taleo, again, an HR software company, B2B software, which is the world that TraceSafe is in business-to-business sales. And Taleo was acquired by Oracle, which became Oracle's PeopleSoft business, their human capital management system, which is, both inside SAP and Oracle. Their human capital management systems have been major engines of growth for those companies over the years. And Gord has seen that growth, go from very, very, modest numbers to massive sales growth expansion. And he's bringing those same strategies and talents to TraceSafe and really growing our business. So we're very lucky to have Gord. So you have this incredible balance between a deep technology team and a highly effective sales leadership that I don't think you're going to find in a lot of competitive companies. Really, the core thesis of this is that health and safety are business essential. Moving our story from the maternity ward into the TraceSafe's first breakthrough product, which was the inbound traveler quarantine program in Hong Kong. Hong Kong was the first country to do an inbound traveler quarantine program. And that was a game changer for TraceSafe. They realized that there was going to be a major catalyst for wearables for the foreseeable future. Now, the product from the maternity ward setting that was geofencing infants was immediately applicable to an inbound traveler quarantine for the Hong Kong government. They were able to map that on instantly. And that was something that exploded the volume of wearables. And we're seeing that bleed into every other industry. We started it with government. Well, we originally started with healthcare, moved into government. We're seeing now, additional traction in the corporate world, in the hospitality sector, and sports. So the four verticals we really go after are government, corporate, hospitality, and sports. But the core finding is that COVID, while it's going to be gone soon, or it's I mean, you don't want to speculate how long or how quickly it'll be eradicated. But it was a catalyzing moment where wearables in the workplace, wearables also all sorts of places. I saw a title on an article that said, in the post-COVID world, wearables are having their iPhone moment. And we couldn't agree more with that sentiment, that companies are looking at wearables as a alternative and a much better way of interacting with their employees than apps, because apps have all sorts of privacy erosions that have happened over the last few years, and there's been a kind of a lack of trust that wearables don't have. They don't have a lot of the baggage that some of those apps have. So our solutions are broadly split up into two major categories that are commercialized, and then our future verticals that we're looking at post-pandemic. The IamSafe solution is used by governments for self-isolation programs. It implicitly tracks the GPS location because it does geofencing. It's a single form factor, which is a tamper-proof wristband. And we've sold hundreds of thousands of those devices to governments all over the world. Some of the most successful programs in the world have used our devices to combat COVID-19. And in a lot of those cases, they've got their cases down to zero. Great example is the Cayman Islands, where our wristbands are used for all inbound travelers. Hong Kong, Singapore, other examples. AllSafe is our business, venues, cruise ship, hospitality, all the other categories we're talking about. This is where we leverage our deep expertise on the technology side to build wearables that just kind of become invisible. We, in the construction industry, we are building them into the hard hats of the construction workers. In other instances, we're building them right into the credentials of lanyards for events. For office workers, we have all sorts of things. we're really using our innovative technology platform to change the wearables for every business case that exists, to make sure that we are the only solution that they're considering. This is locationless proximity tracking, so there are no GPS built into the corporate products. And as I said, multiple form factors. And these are form factors that go from the ultra inexpensive disposable things that could be used at a venue, in a venue setting, as a ticket alternative, all the way up into beautiful high performance wearables that would be used by a corporate executive or otherwise. Our Motion Labs is the area where we're putting a considerable amount of effort going forward, which is to say that we're deploying these wristbands at scale. We just announced the other day that we've deployed 60,000 wearables into one corporate customer. And so what do we do with all of that data, with all of that, with that deployed user base? And the answer is that we need to come up with interesting new verticals that support those businesses. One of the best ways we've found to do that is through human activity recognition and motion recognition. Our newest generation of wearables all have AI chips in them that are understanding motion and accelerometers, and we'll be capturing that information to create products and services that are essential for the businesses that we serve. And so you'll be hearing a lot more of that. But the idea is we're deploying mass amounts of wearables, and over time, we'll be building products and services that make those wearables essential to the companies that are using them. Even though they might be using them for a COVID use case now, they will be using them for many other applications going forward. So our technology, our hardware and software stack look like this. On the hardware side, we have both wearables and gateways. These are both designed, by us. The wearables, have Bluetooth low-powered BLE, variety of form factors, as we've discussed. These are durable, cost-efficient, easy to administer. And the original use case, the deployment use case, is typically around social distancing enforcement, contact tracing, and quarantine management. But in the future, they'll be used for many, many other applications. For example, in the cruise ship industry, we see our social distancing devices being used for things like hotel room access, or guest room access, payments, and integration into their apps and other things. The gateways are sort of the communications layer that gets the communication, that pulls the data from the wearable and pushes it up to the cloud. On the software side, we have applications available as a web app, iOS or Android. And we also have our core cloud infrastructure that can be hosted by us or by the customer in the case of certain governments want to host it themselves. So for the most part, it's an appless experience for the end user, and the apps are typically around administration. But yeah, the use cases are, and I'll go through some of our customer success stories. But the customers using our platform are very demanding. So some of our partners, and most of these have been announced, and we've talked about them publicly. But Ultimate, Kronos, we've been doing HR integrations with them. Atmosic is one of the most advanced chip companies for low-powered Bluetooth in the world, where we have deep partnership with those guys. Triton Software covers 95% of the marine industry, including the commercial cruise ship industry. So they're a major strategic partner of ours that we're working with to deploy into the cruise ship industry, which we see as a massive strategic opportunity for our company. We work with TELUS extensively in the World Juniors, which was world-class athletic event. sanctioned by the International Federation of Ice Hockey, bringing in athletes from all over the world. I'll go into that and how our product was used there. TTG is one of the premier events groups in North America, playing an integral role in the 2010 Olympic Games and many of the Olympic Games that are currently being planned. ReturnSafe is an integration partner in the U.S. Deloitte has helped us with a lot of our major corporate integrations. They played a key role in our deployment that we announced yesterday, which was 60,000 into a large integrated semiconductor manufacturer across our global operations. We're also integrating with Deloitte's platform as well. And I feel like Deloitte is probably the leading kind of return to work of all the big five consulting companies. So some of our success stories, of course, the government of Hong Kong, the first and our major breakthrough product was helping them with their inbound quarantine management, inbound traveler isolation, which was largely very successful and proved that we could work with the government there. On the healthcare side, we worked in community quarantine program with the Singapore Ministry of Health through ST Engineering, which is a large government procurement company in Singapore. So working with at the ministry level in a technology forward country like Singapore, it's been a huge learning experience and served to make the product so much better. Having those meetings and kind of defining the product at that high level has been so valuable for our company. On the enterprise side, in addition to the massive deployment we announced yesterday with a major semiconductor company, we've been working a lot with Singapore construction companies. Singapore had some new regulation that made it so they had to have technology-based contact tracing in order to reopen construction work sites. And the Singapore world is quite interesting. It's sort of a crystal ball into the future, seeing how Singapore is planning to use wearables as a center point for a connected worker strategy. Gives us an unfair advantage really in how we're thinking about things going forward. And on the venue side, we've been working with these large-scale events, mass gathering events, and so on. We helped, in conjunction with TELUS, a major telco in Canada, to run the World Junior Hockey Championship quarantine program and their player bubble. And so that was in conjunction with the Alberta Ministry of Health and was a massive success. They did have a couple COVID positive cases, but it was easily managed and contained, in part by our solution. We had a very nice letter written by the head of Hockey Canada praising our team and their execution and the technology itself. So just go to a quick discussion around the unit economics of our business. We do have a major hardware component and a major software component. Our cloud services are integral to using our product, so it's not just a hardware-only solution. Hardware has great gross margins for the most part. There's oftentimes we make different pricing considerations for different customers that change those margins, but for the most part, if we stick to our rate sheet pricing, the margins are really incredible. But what we really want to focus is the software side of the business. In the long term, the gross margins in software are much better, and it tends to end up being a better conversation with the customer to turn this from large upfront capital costs to potentially ongoing operating costs, and that serves us much better as well from a margin perspective. So that kind of links into the story about our revenue transformation. The early parts of our company, we were very hardware revenue focused, and have made major strides to push that revenue closer to to flip those numbers from an 80-20 hardware software split to a 20-80 hardware software split. So we want our revenues to be dominated by ongoing SaaS revenue, and we are in the process of transforming that. I would say a lot of our customers are even pushing already into a 50-50 split between hardware and software, so that revenue transformation is well underway. And you're going to start seeing that, I think, reflected in when people start understanding, our margins and our software and how we're positioning the company. That will hopefully be reflected in our stock price and the multiples that we have there. Market size is absolutely massive. We have a great business going with the quarantine management, but we feel like COVID is a transitory thing, but the catalyzing moment of COVID and the trend of wearables in the workplace will not stop post COVID. We think the psychology and the sort of enhanced need for employee wellness, well-being, and security is something that's here to stay. And so that business, the enterprise wearable tech business, is a $60 billion industry. And I don't think there's a company better positioned in the world to capture that than TraceSafe. So to talk a little bit more about our post-COVID revenue expansion, it's really around deeper industry-specific product offerings centered around these four pillars, which are employee engagement, employee well-being, quality and workplace efficiency, and workplace safety. So we think no matter which industry you're in, one of those verticals will be critically important to your success, and we can play a huge role in that. And in addition to that, we're growing our sales partnerships and customer success team rapidly. We're hiring industry, different sales experts that are specializing in different verticals, growing the number of sales and referral implementation partners. We really we feel it's a land grab. We're trying to deploy as many devices across as many industries as humanly possible, and then at the same time learn about those industries and develop customized solutions that make those wearables sticky in those industries and long-term revenue generators. So as we said, briefly before, safety, engagement, well-being, and productivity, these are all categories that touch every single business. Safety, having wearables as a center point of a connected worker strategy, you can connect other, asset tracking devices, connected devices, to things that might be considered hazardous, such as heavy equipment or other things, and sort of really give employees extra senses around workplace hazards that they might not have. It's really a sensing enhancement tool. And if it saves one life at a job site, not only, just from a community and human well-being standpoint, obviously is critical, but commercially, eliminating safety hazards at workplaces is major business. And our wearables can play a critical role in dramatically increasing the safety records of any number of companies. The employee engagement, understanding the sentiment of your workers and how happy or how relatively engaged they are, is a multi-billion-dollar business. And the way this is done typically is through surveys and kind of very inefficient means. When you have wearables on all your employees and you have AI chips on, embedded in there, you can start to understand a lot about how your employees are feeling at any given moment, and make adjustments to increase employee engagement. Increased employee engagement directly leads to productivity gains and lowered churn. So these are hugely important things, particularly in specialized labor, and we can make a huge impact here. Physical and mental well-being, just understanding, this sort of ties it a little bit into the engagement aspect, but there's a new focus on well-being in the workplace, and part of that is making people feel safe. This is really links into the contact tracing elements and other things, and then productivity, understanding what people might be working on, how their day composition looks like, how you can more efficiently deploy resources. This is hugely important for any employer. And again, TraceSafe can play a critical role in this going forward as we deploy the devices into businesses. So our roadmap here, we made the TraceSafe acquisition in March 2020. I think it closed sort of July timeframe. We validated the business with some government contracts and some enterprise pilots with $4 million financing. And we've now achieved a certain dominance in the industry with our government contracts, widespread mass corporate deployments, and on the cusp of really validating and growing the hospitality business, both through cruise ships and mass gathering events like hockey games and football games. So our achievements thus far have been an unqualified and amazing success. I think we've outperformed anybody's expectations as far as the caliber of contracts we've been able to gain, the revenue growth we've achieved, and the high level of execution and excellence that our team has shown, pushing these products to some of the world's most demanding customers, the most demanding governments, and the most high stakes environments in the world, international sporting events. I cannot commend our team enough for their execution and excellence. This has been probably one of the most amazing companies to be involved with, just at a personal level. Cap structure is very tight. You can see there's about 38 million shares outstanding. This will be adjusted a little bit. We're getting rapid warrant exercising going on with our shareholder base. So we're seeing some of those 4.8 million warrants come in. The reserve for issuance, the performance milestones, we think there will be probably 2 of the 3 milestones will be exercised. So you'll see a little bit less there. So we see overall the total total diluted probably around more closer to 60 million once it's all said and done. But that's just a snapshot of our cap structure. Some of our news and accolades in the media are here. We've been covered widely in mainstream media as well as industry publications, including a lot of the cruise ship industry publications as we move into that business. And that brings us to the end. So I'll put it back to Brandon so we can jump into our Q&A session here.
Absolutely, Wayne. I want to thank you very much for that. I appreciate you going through that presentation there. I appreciate all the comments and the questions. We have over 20 questions to go through. We're going to do our best to get through as many of those as possible, but I saw them really start flowing in here. So we're going to jump right into the first one, my good man. And that first question is from Nathan. He asks, is the airbeam RTO still on track to close on February 12th?
So the RTO, I don't think we'll close on February 12th, but the RTO is very much on track and doing very well. So I think that we feel like that process is well in hand. And I think that people will be pleasantly surprised with how that process unfolds.
Perfect.
I think that they'll probably need a bit of an extension, and so but which is sort of normal. And I think there'll be a press release about progress and extension coming from the airbeam side shortly.
Beautiful. I appreciate the answer there. The next question is also from Nathan. We got some upvotes here too, so I love the fact that people are participating in that and really making sure that the questions that they value the most are rising right to the top. So let's get the next one. Nathan's got one that says, has TraceSafe determined if the new common shares of the new airbeam first responder will be given to TraceSafe shareholders or a one-time dividend?
Sorry, are they a one-time dividend? So we've publicly talked about our priority to dividend the airbeam investment to our shareholders, and so that commitment remains unchanged. And I think we'll have more information about that, but our commitment is to dividend the position significantly to our shareholders, and we're still on track for that.
Absolutely. The next question here is coming from Dave. Do you guys have some timelines on possible uplisting? What exchange or exchanges are being considered?
So we had some discussions with the Amex exchange. We had some discussions with the Neo exchange, and we feel like as the share price grows, if we can get above $2 or $3, that really opens up a lot of opportunity for us. And we think that a senior U.S. exchange would be where we want to land. And those discussions are happening, but there's no immediate resolution there. And but we're preparing everything. There's our stock is now DTC eligible in the U.S. And pending an uplisting to the QB for our OTC ticker. So that's probably the most immediate change as far as like regulatory listing actions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually goes right to Michael's question where he's asking, is there a rough timeline for, he's saying the OTC QX, I believe you just said OTC QB. And for investors that don't know, once you get that DTC and OTC QB, you have access to well over 49 million investors across various different US trading platforms that do not allow other exchanges like maybe the CSE and things like that. They don't have access to it. When they go to OTC QB and DTC listing, that's millions upon millions of new potential investors.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing we're also considering is making a portion of our fundraising Reg A funding, so that a Reg A offering, I should say. We're talking to some of the bigger issuers of Reg A financings, and TraceSafe is a perfect candidate. What that means is you can effectively offer securities at above the market price for smaller investors that want to participate, and it can be hugely beneficial because it brings in additional shareholders, obviously brings in additional capital, and it's less dilutive than other financing. So we are looking very carefully at making a Reg A offering a part of our financing landscape, in addition to all the other traditional methods.
Very interesting. Well, I appreciate that. And going to this next question from Alex, we've touched on the exchange, we've touched on doing raises. This one touches a little bit more on the value of TraceSafe currently. Alex asks, TraceSafe currently sits around a 45 million market cap. What market cap do you think would be fair for TraceSafe today?
Yeah, I think if you look at our comps, you look at there's companies like MTRX, and I see Face Drive in the mix. The valuations are pretty, all over the place. We see Face
Extravagant.
Drive, yeah, multi-billion-dollar valuation, and we see Loop at many multiples of our valuation. So it's fair to say that TraceSafe, effectively as the number one performer in the category that those two are really going after, is extremely undervalued. We've reported the most revenue by many multiples over our competitors. Our growth rates are significantly higher, and our forward-looking opportunities are even more dramatically higher than theirs as far as our forward book of business. We're just starting to reveal some of the biggest corporate customers now that we've been working on. I mean, those 60,000. That's what we think that's maybe the largest wearables order in corporate history. Although there's nowhere to verify that. But that project has been underway for 5 months. So you can imagine, the opportunity set we're seeing now is significantly different than the opportunity set we were seeing in October of 2020. So it's fair to say that we have a extremely bright future, and as the lowest valued company among our peer group, people will wake up to this very, very soon.
Yeah, well said there. I personally, coming from an investor personally in your company, well said. I appreciate that. The next question is coming from Diego. It says, hard one for you to answer, but I'll ask it nonetheless. Any acquisitions planned for the future?
Yes.
Fair enough. I like the answer. Going on to Nathan here. Nathan asks, what will be the ratio of shares of the new airbeam / first responder that will be given to TraceSafe shareholders if shares will be granted, i.e. 0.24 shares of airbeam for each TraceSafe share?
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to speculate on it. I think it would be, we're trying to dividend the most amount of airbeam shares to TraceSafe shareholders. Although I would just be cautious for people that the airbeam shares, while super lucrative and extremely interesting, are not the value driver of TraceSafe. And I would be cautious. Like, I think that there's certain back of the napkin math that puts our book value now lower than the value of even the airbeam dividend. So suffice it to say, this is a company with a earning revenue in a sector that is one of the biggest growth industries that these major corporations are targeting. We're growing revenues 100% quarter over quarter. TraceSafe independently would be considered one of the highest growth tech companies in the world, and I think people should focus on that. Suffice it to say, our team has made an incredibly shrewd investment in airbeam over a year ago, and we will get the value out of that. But the major driver is the team and the execution that's going on with a super elite tech team here inside of TraceSafe.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go with another question here from Nathan that it's right along the same lines we were just speaking of. Instead of price-wise or the amount of shares, it's more of a date question in the sense that he asks, is there a date that shareholders of TraceSafe shares will need to have held the shares from the eligible for dividend? I'm just paraphrasing here. He's essentially saying, for current shareholders, when is going to be that certain date that once you hold shares on this date, for a fact that you are now eligible for this dividend of these shares?
Yeah, so he's probably talking about the ex-dividend date. We have not set an ex-dividend date, but you can imagine that with the first responder airbeam deal likely coming to a rapid conclusion, that date would be coming up soon.
Absolutely. Continuing on here from Wanda this time, what is the main difference between your product and the product Face Drive has?
Yeah, so I think that fundamentally, I believe face drives. I don't want to. I'm not really intimately familiar with their product, but I believe it runs off a Bluetooth chipset and performs a similar function set. I do know that they came on to into the market significantly later than TraceSafe, and so we understand the technological journey as far as wearables go, and it's we can understand where they are in their in their timeline, and so we feel that our product is vastly superior in many respects, and is clearly outselling their product by a massive margin, and our sales team is doing that, and that's just a matter of public record as far as our revenue, our publicly available revenue numbers, and as it relates to our own internal projections as well. As far as their customer outlook, knowing a little bit about the industry from the inside, I could speculate that we have a more robust, forward-looking book of business.
Yeah, and I'm going to go off of memory here, so forgive me. I don't have my notes in front of me or anything like that. But I remember having a conversation with someone very recently about Face Drive. I'm quite certain they're the ones. They have a multi-billion-dollar company, and I believe I saw something along the lines of they had like $1 million in revenue. Something very again, don't quote me on this, but I remember seeing that, and as an investor in TraceSafe, thinking about, wait, you just had a deal come out that's going to have even more than that, and you are an absolute fraction of that. That was very comforting for myself as an investor, but always go look up on actual do your due diligence, because I'm just pulling from memory from a conversation. But I believe that to be very close to the case. So very, very good case for why TraceSafe is an investment here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. You look at their annual revenue in comparison to a single announced deal, and that's where we're at. So.
Absolutely. And without the access to OTC QB yet, over 49 million people. Again, there's a reason I get passionate about the companies that I'm currently and personally invested in. Always do your own due diligence. Everyone already knows that, but it's nice to see these sort of things. The next question here is from Rick. He says, hello, are there any plans to work with Disney theme parks, which already use wearables for various functionalities? TraceSafe could potentially enhance those functionalities.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if you see the Disney's Magic Band functionality, it's just a great example of how, obviously Disney parks are providing a premium experience, and they're the industry leader there, and other companies are going to have to develop their own thing around that. So you saw back in 2015, the guys that were responsible for the Magic Band hardware and design went over to, I believe, Princess Cruises, and worked with a company there to develop the Princess Cruises wearable device, which now is a little bit, I'm told, maybe in need of a refresh. That wearables team was acquired by Accenture, and we think that there's going to be major consolidation in the space. So it's a bit of a long answer, but number one, I think that companies that are executing well, such as TraceSafe, will become acquisition targets for much larger entities. And in addition to that, the product that has been designed in those major companies and the sort of lead that those companies have provided, every other company has to follow that lead. And so they need platforms like TraceSafe to bring them up to Disney standards. Every experience, every hospitality experience eventually has to reach that level of of quality and kind of customer experience. And the TraceSafe platform is the perfect gateway to get there. So, these hospitality companies are working with TraceSafe to catch up to the Disneys of the world. And so you can imagine a world where every company has a Disney-like experience, and TraceSafe powering, a massive number of those.
Absolutely appreciate the detailed answer there. And a question that's not for yourself specifically, Wayne, but just in general, someone was asking about the size of our cameras. If you're on a desktop, by the way, there's a little bar just above our two cameras that you can actually drag upwards. And now that we're finished with the presentation style of everything, you can make the camera bigger so you can see Wayne much better if that's something that you'd like to do. So please, by all means, go ahead and do that for yourself. And then going on to another question here, this time from Derek. He's asking, what is your annualized revenue run rate today?
Yeah, so we'll be releasing our revenue run rate, but it looks like if I had to, I actually don't know if we're allowed to sort of talk about those sort of forward-looking things. But I'll say this: we've been growing at a revenue run growth rate off a base of about $500,000 a quarter to $1 million. And that's 100% quarter over quarter. That growth rate continues and is intact. I will say that. So you can extrapolate that in any way that you like. But our revenue run rate, if that, that growth rate remaining intact would put our revenue run rate at about 10 million a year plus. And I would say on the plus side.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, Derek, anybody who signed up for this webinar, we will be emailing this recording to everyone as well. Feel free to reply that, and we can get you in touch with Wayne and your team there. We can have a one-on-one discussion, because obviously when it comes to material news, always got to be careful with that and all that kind of stuff. But Derek, if you're looking for any information, you can reply to that, and we'll connect you via email there as well. We have Bryce asking a question. Do you plan to raise money through equity or debt offerings in the near future?
Yeah, so we have a very stable customer base that's made up of a lot of governments and highly creditworthy corporations. So we've been really lucky in that we've been able to access financing for a lot of our growth. We haven't had to go back, even though we have that very high revenue run rate, we haven't had to go back to the equity markets for that growth capital yet. The opportunity sets we're seeing in the future are, multitudes higher than, even what we've experienced now, which is a hyperscale growth. And so I feel that, at a certain point, we will need to tap into the equity markets and for that growth capital to propel us to the next level. When we do that, we're starting to think about what that might look like, and we're starting to talk to investors about how they'd like to participate. We've seen a very positive reaction to the idea of debt financing and financing some of these projects on a more individual basis and understanding the risk appetite. That's probably the area that we've seen the most appetite, given the just need for yield and those sorts of things. TraceSafe is a great vehicle to put a lot of capital to work.
Absolutely. Once again, appreciate the answer. As do I imagine the investors currently watching. Got over 70 people still listening to these questions. So I love seeing that. The next question here, for me, as they're upvoting, they are changing. So I just want to make sure I don't miss anyone's in our side panel here. The next question is from Alex. He asks, the financing roadmap mentioned 15 million plus financing. Will this be spread over the course of the year, or do you want to do it maybe in one shot?
Yeah, we haven't really come to a decision about exactly how the financing map will take place. But there's a lot of discussions going on with various financing partners about the mix of debt and equity and how that plays out. So we'll hopefully have some announcements once we come to a conclusion about that and the board decides what they want to do, we'll be communicating that to the investors.
Absolutely. I got a few more here. They're still trickling here, so we'll probably take just a few more because I see some new ones coming in. So we will have to cut this off in a little while because I know Wayne. I can only imagine how many different events and all these different things you constantly have throughout the day. Always keeping you busy here, but we'll go on to the next question here, which is from Alex again. Is there a timeline on when Emotions Labs product will come to market?
Yeah, we're starting to work on it now. The chipset, the first step of that was the chipset integration into the wearable device. We're going to be announcing all the public specifications around the wearable soon, and that's step one. Step one is making the wearable devices have the ability to pull in that data, and so that is underway. The step after that is to start working with the industries and start understanding their use cases and working with them on a one-on-one basis to build those service verticals that make sense. And so that will be our next phase of the project, and we're going to be getting underway with that very shortly, probably the next quarter.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to continue going through these questions, maybe about 5 or 6 in here. And I think there's a couple here. So by all means, if you do need to run one, you just let me know. I'm going to keep going through a few more here. So we do have a little bit more time here. The next question, there's a couple of these were upvoted here. Forgive me here. Is from Alex. Any plans to collaborate with AML's Health Gauge for the health and wellness aspects of your tech? I believe that to be a ticker for another company.
Let me look up who that is. AMLS?
AIML. Forgive me. I know it by the ticker. I'm with you as well. I see tickers all the time, but then sometimes you don't always tie the company name with it right away.
AIML Innovations. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with those guys, but I think that building some of these solutions into our product, teaming up with our massive distribution channel, would be hugely value unlocking for our shareholders. So, be open to chat with them about what they're up to.
Absolutely. Well, we'll continue going here. One did jump up because of the uptick, the upvotes here. It's a great question. It says TSF was used in the production of the last Sesame Street series. How long were they using it? Was it a demo or a sale? Are they renewing it for their next season? And has this led to any new leads for other film productions?
Yeah, great question. So it was a sale. It was revenue generating. I don't think we've had any of our announcements have been non-revenue generating. We don't really do that. We're sort of in business for business, not for press releases. So it was a revenue generating sale. They were a really important anchor project for us, working in conjunction with another integrator. And as far as I know, they love the product, and it was critical to keeping them in operation throughout their entire season. It was used throughout the entire season, and but I mean, we never named the customer. But it was a long-standing favorite children's television program based in New York City. So it was used the entire season. As far as I know, they have plans to continue to use it. And it was revenue generating and has led to significant other business in the film and television industry.
Fantastic to hear. Very, very great to hear. This next one, we're went from the film industry. We're about to go to the airline industry. Scott asks, airlines would seem to be a potentially huge market. Can you talk about progress in that area?
Yeah, so airlines have been an interesting use case because it's a rapid transit of people from A to B, most cases, and we've been working with the regulators to figure out how a wearable fits in, particularly around international travel. cruise ships are a really much better use case. You have one company in control of the journey. There's a lot less complexity. You have you board and disembark, the same plane. You don't have to deal with these connecting journeys. You don't have to deal with airline carrier networks, where you might be on one carrier. You book flight through one company, but you fly on a different airline. So the airlines have a lot more complexity in their industry than cruise ships. So cruise ships has been focus number one. But as far as inbound traveler quarantine programs, I believe we're the number one company in the world doing those. So to the degree that any country or region or airport decides to do that, we have lots of deep reference cases that we point them to, and professionals, industry peers, that they can reference and discuss about our solutions. And we typically come out as the top group there. So that it really comes down to public policy, and if they pursue those policies, our product fits in perfectly.
Fantastic, and good points on the complexity part of the airlines compared to, say, a factory, or with the cruise ships. That's much more. Here you are, you don't have to move anywhere. Whereas planes, you can have three connecting flights with three different providers. I can imagine that to be very difficult. There's a question here from Mike that jumped right up. A lot of upvotes on this. People want to hear the answer to this one. There was an earlier discussion about TSF analyst coverage. Could you share any progress on that front?
Yeah, so we should have some additional analyst coverage coming out. I'm speaking with three different groups about that coverage, and that will be something that's coming in the very near future.
Absolutely. We have another one here. It's not a question, that's a comment. I like that one nonetheless, but we'll stick to the questions here. This one's from Dimitri. I heard the MLB is looking for health and safety wearables. Is TSF in line for a chance at the home run? If not, is there another major league sport organization that are interested in your products?
So I think we've talked to every single sports league in the world, with the exception of there's a German company that really dominates NFL and NBA called Connexion. They have an ultra wideband solution that was previously used for sport practice, that those teams have kind of repurposed for contact tracing. But I expect to have an announcement around sports very soon.
Perfect. Well, we'll continue on here. We got a few more, and then that'll be all for ourselves today. I appreciate all those who are sticking in, continuing to ask questions, but also continuing to hear the answer to them as well. It speaks to a lot for the type of investor that you are. The next question is from Louis, and it's: what impact does the ban on cruise lines by Canada's government have on the Triton deal?
So, well, I think the cruise lines themselves are full speed ahead as far as upgrading their fleets for the health and safety of their passengers. So, regional bans or different things doesn't really affect the business interests of welcoming passengers into a safe experience. So we haven't seen that as a gating factor at all.
Gotcha. Perfect. And if you don't mind, I'm going to move this slide because I'm almost positive I saw the answer to the next question here. Maybe I'll just leave it for here. Nathan is asking, Make is asking how many shares you have outstanding. It's just right here is that structure. And then where can you get the corporate presentation? Wayne, we would like to turn it on your website, I believe. You can download the your corporate presentation from there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Just add to our, subscribe to our investor list. And you can get access to all of the decks.
Perfect. We have just a couple more here. We are going to roadmap. Forgive the comments here because they keep skipping up and down depending on how much people want to hear the answer here. There's another one from Bryce. Any discussions with additional governments beyond Cayman Islands and Hong Kong?
Yes. Yeah.
The simple answer.
The government question is a bit tough, because there's a lot of public policy and NDA consideration. So I wish I could discuss more on that, but no, we can't. We can't really talk too much about it. But yeah, we get inbound from governments all the time. I mean, and this is right on the tip of their tongue as far as depending on where they're at with their pandemic strategy around the solutions that they're using.
Perfect. Yeah, very definitely a hard one to discuss until it's material and released in a news release. Everyone will know.
Yeah.
When will Q4 be announced? Do you have a rough date for that?
Yeah, we want to get Q4 out as soon as possible. As an unaudited piece, it'll take a little bit more because Q4 is, of course, our audited quarter as well. So we're just working with our legal and our CFO to figure out exactly how we do that. But I do have to jump off. I have another at the top of the hour here. So
no problem. What I'm going to do very quickly here, just before we cancel this, and I want to thank everyone else once again for taking the time. Wayne, for taking your time as well. The reason why I am speaking to this because I'm going to quickly take a screenshot of the remaining questions here because we do have the names and emails of those who signed up for this event. We'll be sure to get you in contact with your IR so we can go back as these questions are important as well. But
Yep.
Wayne's always getting into all the different things you've got planned on a daily basis. So I want to thank you very much and the team over at TraceSafe for everything that you're doing. And we'd love to be able to hear back from you in the near future as these developments continue to come up so that we can keep investors informed. And this was a great question. And there must have been about 20 questions you answered there. So I appreciate that very much, as do, I imagine, the investors still watching as well.
Yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate the support and for taking some time out of your day to listen to our story. So thank you so much. Thank you, Brandon.
No problem at all. And then we've got 10-second countdown while this ends here. Where would you like them to turn to for more information about you?
Yeah, just come to tracesafe.io to learn more. There's lots of information.
All right. Take care now. Take care, everyone.